Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. It's nice to do this show on a Friday. We got tired of confusing our audience with these Casual Friday on Sunday, Monday markets on Tuesday, gaslit styles of shows. So here we are, on time as ever. Don, before the show starts, one thing that I got some flack for in the comments for not confronting last week was this whole retirement arc meta tweet tirade that you've been putting out, talking about leaving crypto, you're done, you're disillusioned, you're winding it down, but at the same time you want like one more bullish trade. Other people saying you can never leave, so on and so forth. So how true is it? Why? What's going on? Are you leaving us? Are you going to leave Casual Friday / Technical Roundup? And who's your replacement?
I mean that I wouldn't know. That's on you.
Nobody.
No, I mean we have a contract with Wu, and I'm planning on honoring it, and then we'll see after that. If we do another one, if we get a good enough deal where I'm like fuck it, I'll stick around or not. I have no idea. But on the trading side of things, like I'm pretty much done. I would like to have like one more. Like I don't want to end by having shorted memes. I mean, it would be a fitting end, right? Just generally, but that would be a sad last kind of trade. But just generally, like I don't have any big plans to kind of re-enter the whole trading game. But I would like to have one last just to make sure that I end on a good note, not on a bad one. As in bad one in the sense that I was shorting stuff. I made money on it anyway. Like it's a good note for me, but it's a bad note for the space. I would like to have a bullish trade to kind of round it out. But if there's no opportunities, I'm obviously not going to take anything just to force it. So yeah, show wise, I don't know. I think I'm going to be around for a while. I mean, at least until the contract is done, and then afterwards, if we have like, I mean, it's fun to me. Like the show is fun to me, so there's a good chance I would just still gonna run it, at least at a limited version of it. Because if I'm not trading, I don't know if we have enough to talk about. But yeah, if people want to watch it and if there's enough like interest, then I could see myself just do this because it doesn't really take up that much time of mine. So I have no idea about that yet. But trading wise, I'm pretty much done. Yeah.
So I guess the most obvious question is why? Is it a made enough money thing? Is it a trade-offs with different things that life offers thing? Is it a, I don't know, spend time with your family, etc.? Like what are the factors contributing to this?
I mean, a little bit of all of that, but the main factor I think is that the space kind of depresses me a little bit, and I don't really feel it as much when I'm not trading it. Like when I'm trading it, it's just the most depressing thing in the world, and that makes me into kind of like a depressing person, and I don't want to be that. Especially given that I have now like a family and everything. Like if I hang around and I'm just like a depressed person all the time, like it's just not great. So that's the main reason. Like for me, I got into the space because I was super hyped about it. Like I obviously wanted to make money, but I was also like, hey, I'm here at something like contributing to something that is going to be big in the future. And now it is big, but it is not big in the way that I envisioned it to be. Doesn't have to mean that like it's all going away, whatever, like all that doomer shit. But it's just for me, like the space has just moved in a direction that I didn't really foresee. Like I didn't think it would be getting this bad, honestly. So I'm just like a little bit of everything. What you said, like I've made my money. I've been around long enough, and now I think there's more interesting things that I could be doing with my life without being in the trenches all the time. Because when I'm trading, right? Like I'm sitting in front of the computer. Even if I don't manage, even if it's high time frame stuff, like I constantly think about the market, think about like I cannot shut that part of my brain off. And yeah, I think now is the time where I would like to be able to think about other things.
I guess the natural rebuttal to that in one form or another is you're feeling this way and the whole, the industry, meme coin, scamming, value extracting grift is depressing, but it's a temporary and passing phenomenon. And then the market, the pendulum swung from extremely centralized asymmetrical VC coins just getting dumped with infinite FDV and emissions on your head, to these meme coins essentially, which stripped all the seriousness, whatever that seriousness was worth, away from the market. And then the pendulum will swing back somewhere closer to the middle.
Oh yeah, but both of those things are shit. Like I was already hating on the VC side of things, like this has been an ongoing problem that I've had with the space, like because this argument a lot of people make, like in regards to my stance on meme coins, right? Like kind of being like, hey, you're being an idiot because the VC coins are so fucking bad. And I'm like, yeah, it is really fucking bad. Like the VC coins are bad, the meme coins are bad. Like this is not a rebuttal to the argument at hand. It just shows that like either you go full serious and it's fucking scams all the way through, or you go meme coins and it's scams all the way through. And it's like, this doesn't really make the space look much better to me anyway. And like if we swing back to the VC grifts, I don't know if that makes it any better, honestly. So we're kind of in this weird pendulum, but we don't get to like any decent ground, at least not what I'm seeing. I mean, there is some good stuff that is being done. The main part being like just stable coins, in my opinion, but that's very boring to trade, right? Like you don't want to be stuck trading stable coins. So for me, like that's the biggest innovation in the space, like the most exciting one. And that's just kind of like that's not something that you can do anything with. That's just something that you can be glad that exists, but I don't think there's really on the investing or trading side of things anything you can do with stable coins.
Yeah, long USDC at $1, stop 0.8, target 1.5 type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've even done that a couple times. It's not like we haven't done that trade before.
Yeah, that trade's been put on with Tether, so-called depegging, USDC with Silverbank. Yeah, that Silvergate, whatever. There've been some fun moments, but would anything change your mind, or would can you imagine a future state where the industry is such that you're like, hey, crypto is good enough again, fun again for me to participate? Because to some extent, this sounds like a very, I mean, by definition it is, but like a personal issue, if that makes sense, where there's like you've got certain philosophical, moral, ontological preferences, they're not being met, and as a result that's having an impact on your character, personality, how you are to be around, and net the trade-off isn't worth it. So it's obviously the industry's fault to some extent, but it's also the way you perceive it and the way it affects you. That's kind of on you, right?
I think like this is mainly on me, right? Yeah. It's not like
you stop being such a bitch and just trade then. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but I mean, what's like for me, like if that was the only thing, that would be like that'd be fair. But I also don't really need to, right? Like it's not like I need to trade. Like I don't rely on it. Like I said, I'm good on that front. So it's kind of like if it's not as fun as it used to be, if I don't feel like I'm being part of something greater. And then also like just in general, like it makes me depressed, then I mean, what's the point, So for me, it's kind of like it's very personal. It's just like I've been in this space like for like now 10 years, full time for like 7, 8, and I feel like it's just time. It's time to hang up the trader mantle, whatever. And just move to something else. If the space gets better, and I think there's a good chance that it will, I mean, I will still observe, just because I mean, I'm eternally grateful what crypto has kind of offered me, and the opportunities, and just kind of generally giving me the life.
Yeah.
Yes, and the friends, of course. No, but just like I'm eternally grateful, and I'm always gonna have an eye on crypto. It's not like I'm just gonna ignore it. I don't think you can really, just because it was such a large part of my life for so long. And if it turns around, right, and I'm like, holy shit, this is actually like doing like the things that I thought it would, I could see myself like invest in it, like as an investor. I don't know if I necessarily need to trade it again. Like even if it gets better, like like the trading side of things is value extracting mostly anyway. And I don't know. I think I've had enough of it. This is just me right now, and this is kind of what's come up in my head in the last couple of months. So maybe that'll change, and I'll be like, oh fuck, I'm so fucking bored not trading. But I don't think so. So we'll see we'll see how that side goes. Like I said, if the space gets like super interesting again, I might just become an investor, and that's that.
Well, I mean, this frees up a lot of time and capital in theory, right?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you gonna do with both of those?
I am not entirely sure. I might go back to university again. Just learn stuff, have a little bit of like other than like the autistic side that I used to have with crypto trading, just have a little like my mind work again in ways like learning new stuff. I don't know yet. We'll see. But right now I'm just kind of like I have this feeling of like I really want to like not not spend as much time anymore as I used to.
Right.
And then once that's done, and once I've unwound everything, which I am in the process of, I will see what comes up. But I mean, I have a young family. We're thinking about having more children, so I will be occupied anyway.
Yeah, that's a time sink in a good way for sure.
Yeah.
You won't run out of things to do with young children. That said, capital wise, is it time for boring equities plus bonds exposure, real estate memes, rare metals? But which I know
Oh
you
no,
hate.
the metal things most definitely not. Like I find like if anything, I would like if I wanted to get metals, I would buy Bitcoin. I still think that's like vastly superior and
Sure.
underpriced in comparison. Just generally, I think metals are overpriced generally. I think it's just stupid to invest in those. But like if you want to invest in them, just buy Bitcoin. I think that's the better metal to have. To me anyway. No, just all of it. Yeah, basically just become like a boring TradFi kind of
The
guy.
boomer portfolio.
Yeah, make a boomer portfolio. And I mean, like the thing is, like, it's not my expertise, and I'm gonna like do a bunch of mistakes, but it's the same as in crypto, right? Like you learn by doing. So that's what I'm planning to do anyway. And I mean, there was always gonna be a time where I do a bunch of that. And yeah, now I'm gonna have to learn about the whole real world and how it works and what I want to do on that front, and then see if I can put my money to use somewhere where it does actual good, at least in my mind, and then yeah, go from there, see what's up.
It's actually very hard to do both at the same time, which is to say, like, be an active trader and then have a large portion of your portfolio or overall money into just like a passive TradFi boomer setup. I don't know if you found this, but for me, whenever I've tried to do that, my sort of trading, not necessarily ego and hubris, but maybe ego and hubris takes over. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck? These returns are shit. I can beat this, you know? And you kind of
Oh
don't want
yeah.
to give your money elsewhere or be passive with it or give it to someone else or take other instructions, especially if you've done well in crypto over like 6 or 7 years. And you look at like bonds and just shoving your money into like a Vanguard or a Fidelity or whatever equivalent, something that tracks the S&P. It's almost like an affront to
Yes.
if you've been trading crypto.
The returns are laughable, but I can kind of like it's really nice because I literally forget that I have them.
Yes.
Like I already moved a bunch of money into TradFi World, and then I just literally just forget that I have it, and then I check back like a year or two later, and I'm up like 5%. I'm like, oh, this is kind of
Genius.
shit. This is kind of shit returns, but I'm up 5%. Nah, I mean at some point, like I think at some point in anyone's trading career, whatever, like branching out a little bit makes
For
a lot
sure.
of sense. For me, it's just like I'm doing it all at once or mostly at once. So
Ripping the
we'll see how
band-aid
that
off.
goes. Yes.
Well, I'd be surprised if some version of this show doesn't exist for a pretty long time to come.
I
You
mean,
know,
I'm enjoying it. Yeah, it's
yeah, this
fun.
show's fun, woo or not woo, even fuck it, like crypto or not crypto, you know? Just like this kind of, it's been doing this for so fucking long. And like a weekly catch up to talk about maybe markets, maybe life in general, I don't think would go terribly. And also, I just think even from a trading point of view, if you're not even if you're not actively participating in the trenches, there's a ton of like accumulated wisdom over 7-8 years of full-time trading crypto, so many cycles, that I think is very hard to authentically get anywhere else, especially with the combo of like, because I was there with you and I know how to phrase these questions and kind of what to pick at and have a rough catalog of the interesting phenomena in my mind. Like worst case, we just become like fucking campfire stories from 2017 onwards and just do that, you know? That'd be quite fun.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm as long as there's like people interested and like yeah, I'm down to
Please let
like
us know in the
have this
comments
chat.
if you're interested. Don is
Yeah.
Don is fickle. He'll just look at the comments, and if there aren't enough of them, he'll say, "We were never friends anyway, Cred. Fuck you." The show dies there. So please
None.
register your interests below. Well, fuck it. While we have you, let's talk about the charts.
Yes.
Weekly time frame.
Looks like shit.
I mean, not a lot has happened, right? Like we had the
Yeah.
breakdown week, and then this week was green, but probably less green than a lot of participants were expecting.
Yeah.
And without even diving into those technicals, if you look at like the 4 hour and the daily, my feed has just been an insane like the least productive tug of war ever, where you have the bears saying, well, this thing broke down, and now you're getting like Trump news, Trump Bitcoin conference news, ETF news, SEC dropping cases news, and it's not going up, which is bearish.
Yeah.
And then you've got the other side of the market saying, well, Germany's running out of coins and they're still selling, but the market's absorbing it, this, that, and the breakdown is slow, therefore it's bullish. And they're both making like pretty reasonable arguments, but the market just has not fucking moved anywhere.
Yeah.
My pedestrian maths interpretation of this is quite funny, where I'm like, well, the news just cancel each other out, so the breakdown is the breakdown.
Yep.
But I don't know if that's like premature or naive or whatever else, but it just seems like there's very little signal in news after, like, since the initial tranche of like German selling, essentially, because it's just been back and CPI spike, retraced, Trump, no impact, German stuff, diminishing impact, but not enough for it to go up. It's just so fucking messy at the moment that I would rather just like forget it until there's some clarity, and instead focus or keep the high time frame technicals as a priority. And those haven't really changed, right? Like we had a breakdown. That's it. It's only been a week. It hasn't even been a full week since we broke down, basically. I don't know what you think of any of that, and we can go back to the weekly as well if you have any specific comments.
No, I think it's pretty straightforward, like you said. I mean, you can make all of those arguments, the news arguments, but I think they're kind of shit. Like the whole Germany selling was like a little bit of a meme anyway, and it got way too big, where people are just like, this is the only reason why price went down. I think there is a very, very high likelihood that we would have broken down anyway, even without the German selling. Would have maybe taken longer, would have maybe taken like a little bit of a different shape or form. But that was just a catalyst to break down, like to go in the direction that the market was set up to go anyway. And yeah, I think like the argument that you made that the news cancel each other out is pretty perfect, because I mean, you can make news arguments both ways, but you cannot make price arguments both ways. I think like it's clear we had a range breakdown, and that's bearish, right? And you can make an argument that it's going to be bullish if the range reclaims again, and I think that's decent, and I'm more than happy to entertain that once we've actually reclaimed the range. And there's something that we see every single time when we have a larger high time frame range, either to like that breaks out either to the up or to the downside, where people are immediately trying to fade it, right? Like they're so starved for volatility that they're just like, oh, finally I can fucking trade. But the move down already happened, so let me just fucking long it, and then they get carried out, right? I think it's a little bit of a stupid way to trade. If anything, like if you want to make the bullish case, I think the bullish case is much weaker than the bearish one. If you want to make the bullish case, you can make it so much better from a little bit higher, right? Like it's so close that I think it just makes no sense to get over eager. And I've seen a lot of over eagerness in the last few days, especially on the altcoin front. Like a bunch of people have jumped into altcoins, and they've been just completely rugged. Which is not surprising given Bitcoin lost the high time frame range, right? Like people are starting to prepare for worse times, at least for a little bit. Like we had a range that was 3 or 4 months long. Break to the downside, there's a good chance that we're going to be stuck down here or even lower for the next 3 to 6 months, if not longer, right? And I think people are kind of realizing that on the altcoin front. That's why you're seeing so much money move out of it. I just kind of like, I look at it and I'm like, people are trying to fade so early, and people are trying to force trades where there's just none. So we're kind of we broke down. I think that should be the signal, and until that's invalidated, there's not really anything other meaningful happening.
Levels aside, you and I put a lot of emphasis on this show on breakouts and breakdowns that don't go anywhere as being potential early warning systems of the move not being legit or eventually being reclaimed. Now, to be clear, that's not, and this is something I think that gets confused a lot, that's not in itself a trade idea, right? Like if there's a breakdown and it's taking a while, unless I get like really good low time frame signals, I don't just start buying it because it's slightly slower than I thought. It does give me a bias, which means that if it does reclaim, I'm going to be more aggressive because then that's just kind of compounding evidence for the failed breakdown. But like if you get a breakdown and it's slow, or a breakout and it's slow, that's not in itself a reason to fade outside of low time frames. It's just like a warning, like, hey, if this ends up being failed and the odds have skewed slightly higher, you better fucking step in on that trade. In this instance, we've had a breakdown, and last week was the breakdown week, right? This week is kind of a nothing burger inside week, kind of as essentially like you'd expect. How many weekly closes around 53, 54, 55, etc., like close to 60k? Would it take for you to be like, okay, this is suspiciously slow, such that I'm either going to start really aggressively building a position now, or my kind of probability that the range breakdown is legit is as close to zero as it can be without the reclaim?
So how long would it have to kind of like
not break down, basically? Yeah.
Yeah. I think like just in general, like that would have to, like, if it goes back to 51, like to support, and then it's kind of building a base there and starts creeping up, we can talk about that. But that would have to be like in 2 or 3 months. I think. Okay. I don't think it makes sense to talk about like a week or two. It makes more sense to talk about a month or two in this kind of context. So like it would have to be quite a while, or it would have to be really good price action. Like nothing that like we're gonna have this or next month would make me necessarily be excited to bid any level that isn't like either 52k or just like 42k. I think 42k, that's just a free trade, or like almost as free as you're gonna get it, because I think at that point you'd have a massive leverage wipe and like pretty much people getting carried out, and I think that would lead to a big bounce. 52k a little bit less so, especially given we kind of tested it, like we front ran it a little bit. But yeah, for me this would have to go down and then consolidate a bunch to make the argument, hey, okay, this is just not moving to the downside, even though it should.
So it still needs to hit support of some sort and go on for longer than
or just go up.
Comfortable with, or just go up. Yeah.
Like I'm down with this going up. Like if it starts like just walking up and it goes to 63k, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna go to 80. Like I think at that point, like there's 70k is not gonna stop it, and then you're gonna talk about 80k or 90k. But the problem that I have with this slow breakout and this whole like argument that people put forward, like, hey, this is a long range. It broke down very slowly, therefore it has to be bullish. It kind of feels like no one's really interested in trading this thing right now. Like the whole crypto sphere is very, very boring to pretty much everyone. So there's not that much eyes on it, I feel like. And then a slow breakdown is just not necessarily a good sign. Like if everyone's watching it and it breaks down and it's like a massively bearish signal and everyone's like, oh shit, it's going to zero. That's one that I might fade, right? But with the way things are trading right now and with the attention that we have, like if it slowly breaks down, that just means like there's really not that much interest. And then to me, that's more bearish than bullish. When you have the situation where it's just like it's slow bleed essentially with like a capitulation or two, kind of just like every now and then. It's not what you want. So I want to see strength. I want to see this trade above 60k, or I want to see this deep into support, and then I think you can fade this breakdown.
I mean, lo and behold, right? You trade the first week after a high time frame breakdown rather, and you get some essentially shitty price action, which is really punishing, because like the first thing you want to do when it's almost counterintuitive, right? Like the first thing you want to do when vol expands is to trade it, but a lot of the time, if there are a lot of liquidations on the back of it and it ends up not reaching like this very high time frame areas, you get some shitty-ish retracey price action. That's essentially what we've had. You posted a chart on Twitter that got a lot of engagement. First of all, congratulations. I know how much that means to you. Second of all, it was a format that you clearly stole from me. Sorry, I mean a format that you've enjoyed using in the past, which is like the roadmap for BTC based on levels, essentially. Like bearish below here, this is fine, we're fucked, capo, etc. what does that look like essentially? So I mean, well, I guess there are levels at every point, and there are jokes kind of interlaced with the levels. But what are the highest signal points in that chart? Is it essentially reclaim 40? Sorry, fucking hell, reclaim 40. Let's not do that. Freudian slip there, right?
Yeah.
Reclaim 60, go to 40. Is that like priority number one, and everything else is just filler, or could something change your mind in terms of importance, essentially, if we're dealing purely with price and not time?
No, I think it's pretty much exactly that. Like go to 40, and then I mean you just kind of have to punt.
Yes. You're
Reclaim
legally
60.
obligated to, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just how it is. You're in crypto. You signed that contract. When you
True.
when you signed up to those centralized exchanges, you should have read the fine print, because
Absolutely.
it's written in there. So like that's where you're obligated to trade at 40. You're obligated to trade the reclaim at 60, or like a little bit above 60. Anything in between, you don't have to, and you probably shouldn't.
Okay. Where is 60 for you? Is it the weekly top of the cluster at 64? Is it the weekly bottom cluster 63? Is it the lowest close at 61?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a struggle. I think like 60K weekly close above would be like a major signal.
Okay.
But that would run into 63K resistance. Like I have that one green candle, like tiny green candle as a box, as resistance. And I actually think that's quite strong resistance. So basically you reclaim 60, you can punt that. And then you have to be very nimble at 63 and basically see how the market reacts to it, because you don't want to be stuck. Like if this can still be like a bearish range retest, even if it reclaims 60, right? It's still a possibility. And I think if that were the case, it would be from 63K where it would get rejected.
I mean, you realize how catastrophically fucked the majority of traders would be if that were to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Because you'd essentially get a mass risk on signal at 60 plus, and if it gets rejected at 63, 64, and then breaks down again, no one's coming out of that alive.
No. I mean, I would lose money too, probably.
Yeah, same. But although that's not an achievement in my case.
No, but I mean, that's just how it is sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Again, that's the thing with trading, right? Like you get a good signal, but this is why I'm saying you have to be a little bit nimble, because like you can take that trade, and I think like most of the time you should be taking these kind of trades, but then you have to be smart enough to see like early invalidations on the lower time frames, especially in a case like this. So I think that's basically just one where you just have to bite the bullet, take a trade into resistance, and then see how the resistance acts, whether it actually does anything or not, and go from there.
So essentially, if I understand correctly, the weekly chart looks like 63, 64 cluster as the safe reclaim, 51, 52 for the front run-ish lower time frame support, and then the ETF range of 44 to 41 as the you're legally obliged to trade here contract.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, just a funny... Sorry, go on.
I think it's just like the 44K level, like that whole ETF range, like that's just such a nice kind of area to trade, just because I mean that's basically where you're gonna see a bunch of people flood the bottom if we would ever go there, right? Like you'd be like,
ETF buyers,
all exactly. All of them are underwater. This is going to zero. At that point, you might actually get Capo to respectfully flip bearish, calling for lower, just because, and then you can have a nice little squeeze.
Hashtag short, hashtag grant.
Yeah.
I mean, look, credit to him. He disclosed that, right? Like, he got a lot of shit for it. And I know it's funny because of the preceding trend. But compared to, like, a lot of the meme coin pump and dump crazy extractive stuff that's going on, doing, like, a disclosed shill for a massive layer one, that especially in this cycle, that's fine, you know, like, comparatively
at least.
Not
that bad.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious. And it's also, like, it's not really legal the way he did it. Like you would have to have put hashtag ad or something in
depending
it.
on the jurisdiction or whatever.
Yeah. Like grant is not enough, which is just hilarious, right? Like he does it right, but he does it wrong anyway, which is just like the exact, like this is exactly how Capo is. Like he does it like, I don't know, like he fails in the most hilarious ways, basically.
I don't know, man. It doesn't sound like you're being too respectful.
Oh yeah, I actually left the respectful at home. need to regain that. No, I don't know. Like the problem that I hate shit talking other people and shit talking other traders. But the problem that I have with him is just basically that he told people to short the bottom, and I think that's unforgivable, right? If you tell people to short and it's like the market is like trading up 500%, and it's one thing, right? I still don't think like you should necessarily trade, like even tell people to short, but like that's one thing. But if you tell people to short after an 80% drawdown into the depths of the bear market, and you're like, this market is gonna go lower, guaranteed, I just like, that's where I start having troubles. And that's why I've been not so respectfully talking about him. But
I think it can become respectable if you change your mind very quickly, right? Or at least if you stick to your invalidations. Because I do think like, hey, this was a trade and it was clearly outlined and I got invalidated. That's what trading is. I think that's a very strong defense to that type of thing.
Yes.
You know, but sort of riding that when you get peak engagement and basically never changing your invalidation, I think that's you know, sets a slightly worse example.
Yeah, and then if you're bearish from 16k, like you're bearish from 20k, and you're like short this to 14, it goes to 16. You're like, nah, it's gonna go to 14 still, and then it goes to 20, and you're like, it's still gonna go to 14, and then it goes to 15. You're still like that, and then it goes to 16. You're like, nah, actually, it's gonna go to 100k. It's kind of like I don't know, like what the fuck is that? Like that's just wild. And that's not how the problem with that is, and this is I think where like you said, the trader defense goes out the window, is because you cannot take that trade. Like no one can actually take that trade. If you're actually trading, like
yeah, that kind of drawdown on a short, especially.
Like, it's just it's literally impossible. Yeah. So, but yeah, is what it is.
It is what it is. There are other main characters, Don. So
yeah,
people
have tried to make me into one.
I think you were for a while with the meme coins and stuff.
Yeah, that's why I have to disappear now.
For reasons that are fundamentally confusing, a lot of that has gone quiet. I'm not sure why. I'm working on figuring it out.
It's really fucking weird. Like I got shit talked like 100 tweets a day. And for some reason it stopped.
Curious.
Yeah, really fucking weird. Yeah. I don't know what that is.
I don't know. What could have happened to the market?
Oh, it must have been like some kind of like bad month or something. Like, was it like probably full moon or something?
Mercury in retrograde.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Retrograde in Uranus. You know, standard weekend.
It was just a bad month for me, huh? Like the stars were not aligned, and
you should have checked your horoscope or something. Yeah,
it is what it is.
By the way, you know how we mentioned like 63, 64, if that's resistance, that'd just be a really ugly trap. My favorite version of, and you essentially pointed out to the type of pattern where you get a good setup, but it runs into a weaker setup, but the weaker setup ends up prevailing. That's essentially what goes on there, right?
Yeah.
My favorite fucking example of that, and I say favorite because it's so painstaking and it used to fuck me so hard, is when you take like a range reclaim trade, right? So, you know, market's consolidating. I'm just fucking doodling on my chart right now. Like market's consolidating, it breaks down, then it breaks back inside the range, so reclaims it. And then you buy the reclaim and you're targeting, well, naturally, like the other side of the range, right?
Yep.
Instead, it just forms a lower high somewhere around the range midpoint and then fucking pukes out of the range and goes lower. Oh my God, I fucking hate those setups so much. So I'm like, oh my God, finally like a reclaim and the range high is far away. Fuck it, even the range midpoint is far away. This is like such a good risk-defined trade. And it immediately puts you on side and you're like, oh, textbook. I knew my patience would be rewarded. And then it just forms this lower high and fucks you. And then you go on Twitter and see all the charts that ignored the range and focused only on market structure and they're eating well on that one. It's one of the miserable outcomes to those types of setups. But I do think it's useful to know, like, what would it look like if this setup gets trapped / fucked, essentially, right?
Yep.
And if you know roughly what those early invalidation signals are, I think it's really, really useful for trade management. So, for example, the natural resistance point for range reclaim setups is a kind of bearish market structure shift, which is to say the breakdown of the range by definition is a lower low. And if you buy it, there's a chance that the rally that you're hoping goes to the other side of the range instead just forms a lower high and fucks you. So if you have like a rough idea of where that is, it can be quite useful to stop you from round tripping the whole thing if you're going to have to. Anyway, that's more or less it for BTC. I don't know if you have any daily time frame commentary. We kind of went back and forth on the 58.2k level on the daily. Yeah. We've had some closes around there that have seen better days. But it's kind of just wick city on both sides, right? Like if you kind of zoom into the daily, the wicks to the lows haven't followed through since the breakdown. The wicks to the highs are into resistance. We're more or less like right in the middle of this week-long consolidation, essentially. Has 58.2 done enough to be significant for you, or is it just like a nice low time frame thing to watch, but not enough to generate signal?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice low time frame thing, but it's not that interesting, I think.
No. Like, and it's better on the 4 hour anyway, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we close above it. What are you going to do? Are you going to just long it because it's a daily reclaim. I don't know. Like it's just right into resistance, and we keep closing below it. And like, are you going to be bearish just because that is in the way? Don't think that's necessarily a good invalidation to a long either. So it's kind of like, what are you going to do with the level? And I mean, I wouldn't know, so I'm just ignoring it. I have it on my chart. It's nice to look at. Like it's one of the ones where you're like, cool, it's rejected there again. Yeah, like, TA. So, but like, what are you actually just like in reality going to do with that level? And the answer to me is just nothing.
Watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? When it comes to level selection, the first thing that beginners do as soon as they learn like how to draw levels or to map a market, they'll have a fucking level absolutely everywhere, like every 0.5% on every single time frame. And the useful question, or I guess the useful heuristic is, if you're not going to use the level for your trading, be it for entry, exits, trade management, or anything else, get it off your chart. Because like it might look pretty, and it's nice when you have a sort of mentally convenient, quote unquote, explanation for a certain move. But if it's not going to be used in any part of your trading, then it's just clutter. Forget it. And that's, you know, sometimes levels can go from being less relevant to more relevant, and you can kind of adjust on the fly. But your chart shouldn't look like a bogged down, everything is a level 0.5% piece of shit. Because if everything is a level, then by definition, nothing is a level. And you won't be able to use your own chart for trading, because if you buy support, sell resistance, even if you catch Pico top to Pico bottom, or Pico bottom to Pico top, you break even because of the fucking fees and the moves are so small, right? So,
yeah.
Clean your charts up. It's a public service announcement from the, not FDA. What's the medical one?
Oh, don't ask me.
Fuck. Okay.
Names of
things
things.
will tell us.
Impossible for me to remember. But yeah, no, 100% agree. Like it is nice. Like you're looking at the chart, and you're like, I'm so good. I drew that level and it bounced and whatever. But if you're not gonna use it, I mean, what's it there for? Other than just thinking you're the best for having good level selection, whatever.
I mean, it's good for LARPing, right? There's a
Yep.
real use case there. Like you just have a bunch of levels and the market does something around your level. That's a nice tweet to update your followers and tell them how intelligent you are. And the thing is, the best part is people will naturally do the work for you. Like I've seen this so much on Twitter. People just post a chart with a bunch of levels, and then the market moves and they repost the same chart and then be like, yep, easy, nailed it, thought so, you know, short closed, long opened, whatever. It's like, wait, there's no trade here. But like people will carry the water for you in the comments and be like, oh, that level's so good, nice one, bro. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? This dude is just drawing.
Yeah, I mean that's the easy part, you know. Like everyone can draw on the fucking chart and make levels up. The hard part is actually figuring out how to trade this thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, we've done our best with BTC in terms of available structures. We'll see how the rest of it develops. No big change, I think it's fair to say, since the last show, right? Like breakdown, consolidation, and that's it for the time being. No reclaims, no super deep tests of support. That's it, really. ETHUSD. ETF any second now, Don.
Yep.
Any second. The weekly time frame is quite interesting because it retested that cluster.
Yep, we talked about it.
You had on your chart and we talked about on the show as well. If the weekly closes, let's say like this, below the bottom boundary, does that change anything? Is it like a bearish retest, or structurally, what are the implications, if any?
Structurally, this has been bad for a while now. So it doesn't really change anything just because this chart, like if you ignore everything else, and this is, I think this is something that you have to say, especially in this case, because I mean, we are going to get an ETH ETF, right? Like you have to ignore everything else when you're talking about this. But technically, this is like a bearish chart and has been for a while now. And technically, this has been a bearish retest, yeah. It's just like, would you actually want to short into the ETF announcement? I don't think so. But would I want to long in it? I actually don't think so either, just looking at the chart. So it's kind of like this situation where, yeah, the chart is clean-ish, like it's a bearish retest. It opens the short possibility. It's barely holding on to that like 2.93K lows. But I wouldn't want to short it, but I also really wouldn't want to long it. So this is one where I'm just like, I'm out of my depth. Like this is, I cannot really say how the ETF flows are gonna be. I don't know how the news event is gonna trade right now. Like it's really been shit, right? Like every time we've gotten like good news, like the market's just done nothing / dumped, which is a really bearish sign to me anyway. But then now that now that we had sell the rumor, like, are we gonna get buy the news? I have no fucking idea, and that's why I just don't like.
Sell the rumor, buy the news. Yeah, banger.
Yeah.
Although I think it's worth, like, at least in my head, the way I structure the ETF trade is just split it into two. One is the announcement price action, and then one is the actual flows price
Yeah.
action. And we have neither at the moment.
Nope.
I guess this could be an indication of sentiment to some extent around the ETF and expectations and so on and so forth. But I think there's also an element of reflexivity baked into it that we fucking well overpriced this thing in that huge daily candle, and we're expecting a lot more kind of optimism and maybe even a faster launch than we got, and it just got walked all the way fucking back down. So we're almost kind of back to neutral, you know?
Yeah, isn't that so fucking bearish? Like
That's kind of
technically, that
shitty. Yeah, we
just
couldn't
like
hold up at all.
full reverse that
I mean,
thing.
compare it to BTC, for example.
Yes,
right?
I mean that's the argument. Like someone's DM'd me on Twitter and was like, "Hey,
That was me."
Fair enough. You can take the credit. And they were like, right now, if you look at ETHUSD on the weekly time frame, isn't this the exact same setup basically that we had on Bitcoin before the ETF, right? As in, like, we had this whole announcement candle. If you go on the Bitcoin weekly chart on the 19th of June, 2023. And then we had like the full reverse, and then we stuck around the lows, and then we actually had that rally up. And I think you can make that argument, right? Like, it's just, I mean, there's a few differences. For one, just like prices are much, much higher now than they were then. Like 20K Bitcoin, that seems like a pretty straightforward buy. 60K Bitcoin is a little bit less of a straightforward buy. And the same thing is obviously true with ETH, right? Like when we're trading down there, like ETH was at like 1K, now it's at 3K, like 1 point something. So it's a little bit of a different story, but just from the chart, you could make the argument that that's very similar. But that's not enough for me to just gamble my net worth on an ETH trade. That the price action doesn't seem to kind of like align with that whole trade idea.
Yeah. I think it locally makes sense in terms of pump candle, retrace, go up, right? Like in terms of just within that consolidation, which I've boxed out on the chart. But bigger picture, it doesn't make as much sense, because when if we're expecting a launch within like a week or so for the ETH ETFs, like BTC had its mega run up beforehand, and then around the launch, it'd been basically telegraphed since 30K up to 45, essentially up to 44. And then you had the week of the launch, which was the potential sell the news event. That was when you got the first pullback after leading the market the entire time, and then it fucking shot off. But like the thing is, even if you take the fractal at face value, that this is where we're at, you can still split the trade into two, essentially. Like the announcement of the ETF and then the actual flows of the ETF. And if you fuck up the first one, if the second one is there, you can still trade that, and it's a pretty volatile and sizable move. So like for the ETH ETF, it feels like the announcement stuff very likely is going to get a pop of some sort. Like even if it's intraday, very short term, I would be surprised if it doesn't. But I think the bigger trade will likely be, the second part. Like, what are the consequences of the ETF? What are the flows like? Can we compare it to BTC, etc., etc.? But for the time being, I feel like we've gone through the whole, like every bit of price action that you could have squeezed out of this thing without actually getting the ETF. I feel like we've done it. We had like the full mega pump, the sideways, the full retrace. Like we've ticked every single box for ETF speculation without the damn thing being live. And at this point, you could just segment the future in two, as mentioned. The day of the news announcement, which will give you some information, but then I think the actual flows in the weeks to come will give you additional context. At this point, I feel like it's too much has happened without the thing itself, and you got to get it from the source at this stage.
Yeah, I agree. My gut feeling is that the flows are gonna be disappointing, honestly.
You think so? Oh dear. Well, yeah, that's kind of bad, dude.
Yeah, because the reason why I think that is just because crypto has just been like very much out of the media, even though Bitcoin's at like traded at 70K, and there's not really been that much interest. Like in Bitcoin, yes, but also like I said, Bitcoin was trading much lower, right? Like it's not like if this thing launched at like 60K Bitcoin, I don't know if it would have had the same impact, especially given like everything was moving up basically into the launch. Like into the actual launch on Bitcoin, right? Like the market structure, like this thing was just basically just doubling every other month on the Bitcoin front. ETH side of things is a little bit less nice, and I generally think there's not that much attention. It's not that much people that would buy it, but I could be wrong. And I actually like it to be wrong on this one, because I think like if we get good ETH flows, that would actually open up like a bunch of altcoin trades. But I think it's gonna be not that great. But we'll see. I mean, but that gut feeling with the price action being horrendous and just the entire market just looking sluggish and Bitcoin having broken down makes me really not want to gamble on this thing. But like you said, I think there's gonna be a pop the moment it gets announced. It's just that there's a good chance that 4 hours later it might actually trade lower than that announcement pop. So yeah, we'll see.
That said, Don, last week when do you remember my my Londoner pantomime with your friend at the pub asking you whether to buy the range low? You told him no, and instead that was the Shimiko bottom before a gargantuan bounce all the way up to like 3,200. So why did you FUD me out of an amazing entry, and how are you going to apologize to both me and our viewers?
I mean, if you're talking about weekly time frames,
daily, bro, daily. Come on, we deal with real time frames on this show.
Yeah, was that daily?
It was a daily. Yeah, 2,900.
I don't remember any such
Oh,
things.
how convenient. How convenient.
No, but like realistically, like if you're talking about any like significant time frame, these bounces are like actually very, very uninspiring to me.
Yes.
Like this is actually just a tiny, tiny bounce. We had like on ETH even, like if you look on, like we had that 4th of July 2024 candle to the downside. And then we had the 5th of July kind of put in a bottom-ish. And what we've done basically is just bounce towards the high of the 5th of July candle. Like there's barely been any good price action on this thing. Low time frame, yes, this bounce, but high time frame, this is like actually quite sad price action to me anyway. Like I look at this and there's barely any movement. It's honestly the same for Bitcoin. When you just zoom out a little bit, like, yeah, there's been a little bit of a bounce, but it's been pitiful and it's been down only. So you would expect at some point to make like at least one false higher high, right? Where you basically just like, you take out a prior high, trade above it, and then people get really fucking bullish and then you just dump off again. Like, but not even that has been managed, right? It's literally just been straight down the entire time. So price action has been pretty negative in my eyes, and like the bounces have been very muted. That doesn't mean that this cannot go up. It just means like I think like the bulls should not grave dance on any graves, because realistically we really haven't had any bullish movement whatsoever actually on any time frames that are higher than the 4 hour.
Yeah, it's been a bit shit on the high time frame bounce horizon. That said, I'm not terribly surprised by the apprehension from ETH bulls, especially because I think they did a lot of business on that single day ETF approval type candle, and then they got so fucking burned for it.
Oh yeah.
With the full retrace, that like I can completely understand the perspective that like, okay, even if the ETF is bullish, I've been on this ride before and I didn't enjoy it. So why don't you actually show me the ETF this time? Because last time I bought, if you think about it, like the ETH ETF speculation trade has been fucking miserable, right? Because if you started taking it when the BTC ETF got approved, you've underperformed the whole time. And if you held that trade, you've continued to underperform. And then even if you longed the day of the actual real ETH ETF approval, after weeks and months of underperforming relative to BTC, that then full retraced on you.
Yep.
So it's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? This trade is just absolutely murdering my portfolio. So I can understand if... I also wouldn't be surprised if that means we get like a similarly aggressive sized move if the flows are good or anything else. They're just the same participants forcing that trade over and over again with whatever money they have left at this point.
Yeah, I think like if we get a surprise on the flows and they're actually really, really good, yeah. But otherwise, I just expect it to be quite muted.
It's been such a rough trade this cycle, dude. Like, shit.
ETH has been really, really rough. And I think it's probably going to continue unless it gets a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's still reliant on Bitcoin, basically. I don't think the ETF is going to change anything on that front unless it's very, very surprisingly good. And that is something that I don't expect. So it's kind of like, I still think ETH's going to be Bitcoin's bitch, basically, for a while. So, yeah.
Well, you heard it here. Yeah, it's been a terrible trade to force. I think at this point, just waiting for the ETF makes sense. Every attempt to try to price it early has basically been a shocking trade, either in underperformance terms or in USD round trip terms. Just not good. It's kind of like the ETH BTC downtrend, right? Like trying to time the bottom on that, and even if you've been catching local bottoms, just one of the most unrewarding trades in general, especially with everything the ecosystem, the market has had to offer.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at ETH BTC, the picture doesn't get much better.
No. That's why I skipped it. Solana.
Yeah.
136. And the weekly level is, I mean, it's at 136, right? It's kind of 134. That's basically where it's been stuck.
Yep.
Yeah, 136 weekly. That's kind of where the price is at. The daily time frame has just been really shit to trade, actually. You're essentially getting volatility compression kind of around the extremity. Now, again, my boring take as always has been that we've tested 125, the daily range low, like 18 times. And my brain just basically switches off when you get more than 3 tests of a level. 2, 3, sometimes 4 tests of a level, depending on context. Any more than that, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to buy this, like rebuy this in the same direction, you know? Sometimes it makes money, like with BTC, not having any exposure before the breakdown, especially if you had alts that ended up being good. Other times it means that if the market just chooses to spend a lot of time on a level and eventually bounce from there, I'll have to chase it up or miss a trade or whatever. But at least for me, from a process point of view, when I see like a floor essentially getting put in and the bouncers getting weaker, that's not a reason for excitement unless there's, you know, a further development, like a failed breakdown or something of that nature. So are you still in in Sol fractal mode essentially, where this is some sort of higher time frame, lower high before a range breakdown, or has your thinking changed at all on this thing?
No, it's still pretty much the same. It's one of the stronger altcoins. So like it's not necessarily the one where you would want to have the bearish trade, like the bearish altcoin trade on. At least hasn't been that, like in the last 2 weeks. It's been surprisingly strong. But the USD pair just looks bearish. Like this is just hard to make a bullish argument for. Like the Bitcoin pair, you can make a bullish argument all you want. The USD pair just is basically like it broke down. It made a lower high, it made a lower low close, and it's struggling really hard with the prior support right now, right? Like we had consolidation on the weekly time frame around like 140 for 3 weeks. Then we had that bounce that made the lower high, and that's exactly where we're struggling right now, right? Like the 140 level. And like you have a little bit of an impulse on Bitcoin to the downside. I think that just teleports down with it. So like Solana versus the dollar looks bearish to me. I would look much better the moment it reclaims like 145, 150. Until then, just looks not that great. But like I said, Sol BTC has been surprisingly strong. So maybe that bails it out. I don't know, but I just look at the USD pair and I'm like, ugh, that looks bad.
What about the monthly USD pair? You know, the cluster high is pretty much what's been holding the market up for like 4 months, 122. The other side of that, depending on where you draw it, if you take the more recent consolidation bottom, it's at 96. If you take the lowest close of that same cluster, it's at 100, roughly, round number. Do those monthly levels kind of inform your view at all? Because they're quite good on the daily as well, and just in general, pretty good areas. We've spent a lot of time at the cluster high. Is there a trade there where, okay, even if the cluster high rolls over and gets closer to the 100 area, that there's still a monthly support long to be taken there?
Yeah, I think the 100 level is quite nice. Like if the market makes like this false drive down, like if let's say Bitcoin pushes down to 52K and actually shows strength there, I could see like Solana just have like this wick towards 100 and then actually just get bought back up. That would look quite good. It does, like the Solana monthly chart looks very similar to the Bitcoin monthly chart, right? Just before it broke down, basically. Like you look at Bitcoin on the monthly, we had that support that we were leaning on for a bunch of time, right? And eventually we had that kind of like this current monthly candle that's kind of trading below all of it. And on Solana, you have the exact same thing, just not yet broken down. So, yeah. I don't know.
Leaning on levels sucks in general. There's just nothing fucking good comes out of it most of the time.
Like I don't know. Like it's basically the Solana trade is a little bit of a shitty one because the Solana BTC pair has been counter trading the USD pair, and then you're just kind of in this situation where if it goes down, like when Bitcoin's gone down, there's been weird strength on the Solana front, and when Bitcoin goes up, like oftentimes there's actually been weird weakness on this, and then it's just kind of like this is just a shit trade, and that's why people are getting chopped up left and right on this, where you look at the daily USD pair and what the fuck's that shit?
Yeah, that's a real piece of work.
Yeah. But I think like the problem with it, and the problem that like just generally, like you said, 125 has been tested so many times that I would be scared as fuck if it goes back there if I was in a long position, because I mean, like if that gets run over, that's like a 6K ish level, right? Just like iron support, and that is something you don't want to break. Otherwise, you're probably getting completely run over.
It's like 3 months, basically.
Yeah, and it's been like weaker bounces as well. So like you come back there anywhere close to 125, I'd be scared out of my mind in longs.
Thank God it's all the way at 136, Don.
Yeah, so you have a little
very
bit
far away.
you have like $10
yeah.
worth.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Any altcoins that you've looked at or want to mention? I mean, Whiff.
Whiff we talked about.
That's been struggling around the lows.
I wonder why. Like such a weird thing. No, but I mean, like, I don't know. Like,
I mean, it's at least some vindication of what we talked about in last week's show, which was a lot of this relative strength stuff is horse shit. Because even if you're right, you're wrong if the market stays weak, and then you're probably not right because those bounces are a product of market cap and liquidity a lot of the time.
Having gone down so much.
And having gone down so much, correct. Which gets reflected in the market cap.
like if you get like a 99% move to the downside, like, you can bounce like 5x the next candle.
Yeah, Luna and FTT, they were bouncing like motherfuckers, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you like literally like Luna bounced like 10x, I think.
Yeah.
But then that 10x...
Are you saying Whiff is going to 10x? Okay, you've heard it here first.
But that 10x took it like... It was still down like 99.9% after the 10x, you know? Like that's the thing, like it's useless.
Study mathematics.
and people that are in long positions or like have been holding always use these arguments, right? They're like, oh, this bounces so much. And I'm like, dude, like if something teleports down, like it wipes out the entire order book. There's no people that had time to even put sell orders in yet. And then you're like, oh, it bounced. Like, motherfucker, this shit just like one person bought, right? Like
that's an empty book, yeah.
Like that's literally what it is, right? Like the book is empty. Like a thing goes down 50%. No one's besides like the market maker has had time to put any orders in. And then this thing can bounce like all the way back up technically. And until people that actually hold the coin come in and decide to sell it. And so like that whole argument is a little bit of a shit one. But yeah, Whiff's been atrocious. Scary part is that they're still very loud on Twitter. Like it's one of the worst things to see when your coin is going down 80%. Like what you want to see is that no one talks about it anymore and everyone's fucking ashamed. What you don't want to see is like people like doing the bag holder talk, because then like there's a shitload of people still in this that are still actively watching it. And when they're actually actively watching it, any bounce is like technically a place to sell for them, right? Which when you're not actively, like the XRP people, right? Like they're probably not actively watching their coin anymore because that shit basically went to zero. They would be brought back by a rally of like 300-400%. The Whiff people, they're happy to sell like 30% higher. Just because they're actively watching the market and like, oh shit, I lost so much money. Maybe I can recoup some by selling into this bounce. So you're kind of like shit out of luck on that front. I think like it's still too active to be interesting for like a
capitulation, basically.
Yeah. Like people have not capitulated apparently.
So not enough desperation on Whiff. What about the good old Popcat? That's also essentially.
Oh, I don't want to talk about that. People fucking hating me already. Like classic. The Popcat people are like, for whatever reason, like hating on me. I don't know why.
Fantastic. Moving on.
But I mean, also doesn't look that great to me.
Pepe, you mentioned last week as a potential
bearish entry.
Yeah, it kind of looks shit.
Yeah, I mean, I last week I talked about like the daily being a bearish setup and the weekly being at support, and it's like the daily setup is playing out and the weekly is doing fuck all. So I mean, that's a good sign of where the market is at right now. Like it's ignoring the higher time frame levels in favor of like the bearish lower time frame ones. It's not great. Doesn't look that good. It looks much better if it reclaims the daily level, which is, I mean, I'm sure you have it. That basically that prior range high from like the 15th of March. I don't want to.
Yeah, got it.
Say all the sats because, yeah. So if it reclaims that, maybe
996-ish, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If it reclaims that, maybe. But I mean, technically, it's at weekly support. So if you want to make a gamble, that's the last. It's literally last weekly support before nothing. So if you want to make
before
a gamble,
halving.
yeah, like literally. So if you want to make a gamble, that's weekly support. It's just the daily doesn't really agree with it. So you're kind of stuck in between two time frames that disagree.
Yeah. Dogecoin.
Dogecoin.
I mean, it wicked.
Tragic. Tragic. Yeah, but same problem. Like there's good wicks and there's bad wicks, and I think this is a bad wick. But
a lot of the market looks this way, where you basically got a wick and then positioning after the wick being like that was the bottom, and then just dog shit price action as the follow up.
Yep.
Because that's what happens a lot of the time, when you get like the wick day where the smart traders essentially make their money, and then sort of a lot of systematic traders will pile in after that type of wick day in the next day. So it tends to be quite strong. But then if the market's a real piece of shit, it literally doesn't go anywhere and will just eat that liquidity and go sideways / do nothing, which isn't a great sign because you want to see, if it's a real capitulation, then you should see a lot of positions that are really wonky and traders who got liquidated buying back and shorters in trouble closing their shorts, which also converts to buying pressure. There should be some sense of urgency if the wick is meaningful, basically.
Yep.
But if you get a wick and fuck all happens, then that's sort of telling in itself. Now sometimes that is fixed by time, but not always.
No, I think Doge is pretty straightforward. Like if you actually want to have a Doge position, like that whole breakdown that we had on the 3rd of July 2024, like that breakdown from 0.127 ish, which is also like that was a range, right? Like we had a bunch of bounces at 0.127, and then it acted as resistance. Like you reclaim that, you can make the bullish argument, and I mean I don't think that's too much of a hurdle, and it's not that far away from current price. I think at that point maybe, but right now like this just looks like it's basically it's bleeding and it goes sideways and then it's crashing and then it's bleeding again. Like it's just not it.
Yeah, I've been struggling with this watch list because a lot of it just looks kind of shitty. Bonk as well was relatively one of the stronger ones, but if you look at this on the weekly, like it's the classic relative strength meme, at least in terms of like market structure and stuff, right? Where it's like, oh, this thing is like still around the highs, but then if you zoom in, actually look at the price action, it's been fucking dog shit.
Yeah.
There's no like good trades necessarily to be had there, but because it's sort of hovering, it feels stronger than it is, if that makes sense. Especially if you're just clicking through a watch list in general, this looks closer to the top than to the bottom. You're like, oh, this thing is strong. Once you actually zoom in, you're like, okay, what the fuck is this thing? There's no rotation here that's tradable.
Yeah,
Tom looks very similar as well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's just generally really hard to squeeze money out of the altcoin market right now. I think like they're just not trading that nicely.
Yeah.
Like I'm just straight up
through this thing right now. It's all kind of shitty, dude.
Looks all like legit. It all looks very illiquid. Like barely anyone's trading it, and then Bitcoin does one move, and these things just nuke like massively, and then nothing happens until Bitcoin makes the next move.
Yeah.
Like that's not what you want to see. And there's no real narratives either. Like you cannot there's no. Okay, we're just all busy trading DeFi. That's why these coins are not moving. Or, okay, we're all busy doing this and that. It's not the case. It's just like everything is dog shit. The memes had that narrative, but even those, like, I mean, Whiff was one of the hottest one, and that's trading like complete utter shit. Doge just died. Pepe is struggling massively. So even the one sector that we had in the altcoin landscape that was performing decent is kind of like not doing so well. So it all relies on Bitcoin going up, and that could happen, right? And then the market could turn around. But until then, I think it's a little bit of a, like, it's not a place where you definitely, like, it's not the place to do business right now.
Yeah. And that's can't be that surprising. It's the first week post breakdown.
Yeah.
Like, unless you were catching the bottom of the breakdown, in which case you probably closed a decent chunk already. There's fuck all to do here. But hopefully this is us fudding the bottom or something, and then ETH ETF surprised the upside, and we fucking melt up, and Don retirement tweets get paraded on the timeline. You know.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. Yeah, people are gonna be like, yeah, it's what it is. But I think just generally, like, it makes more sense to do all of that shit, that risky shit, basically, once we get the good flows, and not expecting the good flows and then getting surprised.
Yes.
But that might just be my cautious European mind speaking. Yes. Like, if you want to go max risk, whatever, just, I mean, do whatever the fuck you want to do.
It's your life.
And, yeah, no one's holding you back.
Just do it on our ref. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Exactly. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Because they look so. I mean, listen, we could always do the 4-hour, 1-hour LARPing thing. Like, this is the support, this is the resistance. But like, who gives a fuck? Like, this is that stuff is not interesting, and it's all going to be BTC determined anyway. You know.
Yep.
So.
Basically, everyone's holding their breath until Bitcoin makes a move again,
essentially.
and then we're gonna go either way.
The only news stuff I had was pretty boring for the most part. Just 3 pieces. One is that Germany moves more Bitcoins to exchanges, now has 6.1k BTC left to sell, and this was today. This feels like a typical case of news getting stale and having less market impact as time goes on. At this point, you know, it's almost like the GBTC Coinbase type of shenanigans, where initially that had really big market impact, and then there's almost like a spike where it has increased market impact because people realize that it's a thing and then front run it and contribute to the flows. But then eventually, after like the 5th, 6th time, and with the actual supply of coins going down, people just start giving less of a shit. I feel like that's where I feel like most of the alpha with that kind of Arkham monitoring, German selling, etc., is pretty close to stale at this point. And news-wise, like, oh, Germany's selling, what's the market doing? I just think the fact the market's doing fuck all is not signal enough considering other pieces of news.
Still,
I mean, you kind of shitty, still kind of strong, whatever. Like, it's gone nowhere.
Yeah, and I mean, you can make the argument that, like, Germany's pretty much out of Bitcoin now, so you should be front running. Like, price should be going up. Like, because whenever you have telegraphed selling, right? People, like, the worst part about telegraphed selling is that people are not going to buy anymore.
Sure.
Because, like, why the fuck would you buy if you know that there's a bunch of sales coming in, no matter the price, basically? So, I mean, why the fuck do, like, business at worse levels? You can get a bit like a better price, but then at the tail end of the selling, you obviously are going to have all of those people that have been waiting to buy. They should be rushing in, right? So you can make the argument that we actually, just based on the fact that Germany's basically out of coins or almost out of coins, we should have been kind of starting to move upwards, and we didn't. Or you can make the argument, hey, like, Germany has been selling, we have moved down. Like, it's just, the market is just very, like, doesn't really give a fuck right now.
I don't know, bro. I'm looking at the biggest 5-minute breakout I've ever seen in my fucking life. So maybe you want to change that opinion before it gets too embarrassing.
Shit. I might have to delete this this episode. And
if this video never gets uploaded, you know why.
No, they don't, because
that's true. That's true. That's very meta of you.
Yeah. I mean, that's the power of the podcast, or you can just delete it.
As we've done with so many shows, right?
Oh yeah, infinite shows.
It's like, did we really miss Casual Friday, or did we fud the bottom? You'll never know.
You'll never know. I mean, I think people will know, just because we're at the core of it, very lazy people, and we would never redo it.
Oh my god, yeah.
Absolutely have to.
Like, dude, probably a good 30%, if not more, maybe 40, 50 of the Monday markets I've missed is where I've done an episode, but then realized I was either muted or not recording, and then I just give up and, like, go back to my normal life.
Like, legit, like, I would rather be, like, hilariously wrong than redoing like an episode that we've already done.
100%. Spot Bitcoin ETFs log 79 mil in net inflows, reaching 5th consecutive day of positive flows. I think this just contributes to the news-based hodgepodge, right? Yeah. Like, we should be going up more. Germany versus ETFs versus news versus spot ETFs for ETH coming up versus Trump speaking at the Bitcoin convention versus Bitfinex TWAP versus equities correlation. Just fuck off. I've had enough.
Just look at price.
Just look at price. Yeah, at a certain point, especially if the news is kind of cancels each other. News pieces are cancelling each other out, and it isn't clear, who's in the driver's seat. Price is probably your best indicator. It's nice when you get news plus price, but if news is a wash, which I think it is in this case, then price is price, I think is better.
Yeah.
And then final one, Trump to speak at Bitcoin 2024 conference in Nashville later this month. I guess if we were doing like macro fundamental positioning, LARPing type of thing, I've seen a lot of commentary, and the GOP now has like a crypto policy essentially for their party. Yeah. And it's also customary for the head of the SEC to resign when the president's term ends as well, I believe. So then if you were going to do macro positional LARPing, you would put together some fucking misleading cauldron of post-halving price action, ETF inflows, Gensler leaving, and then whatever you think the odds of the GOP winning / Biden losing, or whoever the Democrats decide to wheel out in the 11th hour if they get rid of him. You put that all together for some like cyclically pro-crypto type of cycle, right? Yeah. Not our business. I think most of that tends to just be LARPy, like sell-side newsletters. But if you wanted to go narrative crafting / coping as far as beyond 2024, I think that's one of the more bullish angles that you're leaning towards. And you're also at that point hoping that the rate cut isn't bearish, because there's some interesting research on like equity returns with rate cuts, and they subcategorize rate cuts into like recession-based cuts, panic cuts, normalization cuts, and there's some interesting data there. But like I think those are the key points, all of those that you're hitting if you want to put together like a macro thesis for 2025 and beyond. But I also think if you're trying to put together a macro thesis for 2025 and beyond, you're not the type of person that like makes money trading. but you might have a good newsletter business like we did for like 3 months or whatever in 2018. So there you go.
Yeah, well said. I kind of agree.
maybe you should go to the conference and claim some of your Trump NFTs, Don.
Oh,
before he inflates them for like the 4th time.
yeah. That was. I mean, that was the saddest could have been trade ever, because I think that would have done really well if he didn't just keep on printing new NFTs. It is what it is. But yeah, I think just generally like the macro stuff. Whenever I've heard a macro expert speak, or like even in my comments when I had macro experts in my comments, the most like memorable time was at 16K where people were telling me that.
Just about to say, no one fudded the bottom more than macro experts.
Yeah, like literally, like I was told that I was being a complete and utter retard for being bullish because macro was so bad that I mean there was no way that this was going to turn around. And here we are trading at 60K, and I mean I haven't seen anyone in my mentions being like, oh shit, like macro is bearish. Like that's the thing, like these macro people, for some reason they're always a fucking cycle late, right? Like
yeah.
Like Bitcoin went from infinity to 16K, and I didn't hear any macro analysis. And then at 16K, like 16 to 20K was where everyone was speaking macro. And then price went up, and everyone was just kind of like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't me. Like everyone, like, and I mean, like, and this is as close to everyone as you can get, right? Was talking about macro at like 16 to 20K. Yeah. Like people that I've never seen talk about anything else but price talked about macro, and I was just like, this is just, and so that whole thing is just, I don't know. And now people are saying like, hey, the bull run has to continue forever because of macro, and I'm like, yeah, maybe it will go up, right? But I think the macro situation is not necessarily something that you can lean on like that. But maybe I'm just not smart enough to get the macro picture. But if I'm not smart enough, the people that are in my comments are most definitely not smart enough. So yeah, I don't know.
Fucking macro. I think it's funny to see how the progression has come from watching Powell press, like central bank press conferences, like it was a sporting event on crypto Twitter, to now like pump.fun meme coins. It's just literally a fucking quantum leap in terms of what matters. And, like S&P correlation plus Jerome Powell presser. And now it's just like, which celebrity are we onboarding and what's hot on pump?
Yeah. fucking wild. I mean, this space is just
This place is
it
fucking.
moves
This place
so
drive you
fast.
crazy, man.
Yeah. It's just
And
moves
it's clearly
so
driven
fucking
you
fast.
crazy since you're fucking off, Don. But hey ho.
No. I mean, that's the clearest sign that I still have sanity left. I think the fact that I'm actually leaving it. I think.
Well, listen, on that bittersweet note, I think we'll wrap up. Don't worry, dear audience. I mean, first of all, let Don know if you're interested in some version of Casual Friday in the future. Be sure to make him stay for at least one show a week so we can keep these casual chats going. Thank you to Woo for supporting the show. Their links are available in the description below. Please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel before you leave. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.